So before we get started, first thing I want to talk about is scale and perspective. It's something that every environment modeler should know something about. So we're going to take a look at a few examples and train your eyes so that you can spot some visual references when you're looking at your reference images so that you can tell what the scale of certain objects are. So we're going to start by looking at this little scene here, and all we've got is the sky and the ground. And when we look at this, we don't have any visual reference other than the camera is pointing straight at the horizon. So what we've done here is we've added a man feet off the ground. And we can tell because if this was about 3 feet, then that's roughly about 4 feet. And what we've done is we've drawn some lines to the vanishing point, and this represents our perspective lines. So what we can do is we can say, as this person moves away from us, he will always scale and fit within this ratio here. So this is still 4 feet off the ground, and he is just moving further away from us. Here we've added a tree to the scene, and to make sure that it's the proper scale, we need to take a guess at where 4 feet up this tree would be. So I've gone ahead and I've marked that with this white line here, and we're just guessing that that's about 4 feet. So if we follow this red line across, we'll see that it lines up with this man's feet. And what that means is that they are both equal distances from the camera. And it also means that they're in scale with each other. So it applies to architecture really well. What we've done now is we've got two vanishing points, and this is our building, let's say. And if you follow these lines, they will always go to these vanishing points. And here's another example. And what I've done here is I've kind of made it a little bit more like a building. I've added a doorway, and we'll go over this in a little bit, but a door is typically about 6 feet 8 inches tall. So for this example, I'm going to call it just 7 feet to make it easy. Now the camera, as you can see, is we're lined up with the horizon at the top of the door, so the camera is 7 feet off the ground. So if we follow our vanishing points, then everything still lines up. And here we go, we've added Photoshop, and we're going to figure out where the horizon is for this image. It seems kind of like a simple thing, but it's pretty easy to get this wrong. So what we can do is we can look at this photo and look at lines that will help us find where that horizon is. The obvious ones are the sidewalk. So what we can do is we can actually just trace these. So if we follow this line down here, and we'll follow this one down, we can follow this one, and you'll notice that they're all starting to cross at about the same spot. So line up with the top of that roof, something right about like that. And there you can see our horizon is right about there. So moving on. Let's talk a little bit about standard dimensions of things. Now, it's kind of a little mini architecture lesson, but it's going to really help you out when you're looking at your reference images and trying to figure out scale. Uh, One of the things that I like to use as good reference are bricks. And this is a standard brick right here, and we've got the dimensions. It's like 3 and 5/8, 7 and 5/8, 2 and a quarter. But really, that's a little too accurate for just doing some CG models. I mean, if you're doing some architecture renders, then maybe you want to be accurate, but something, a quarter of an inch off, you probably won't see it. So we can call this 8 inches and 2.5, 3, whatever. It doesn't really matter that much as long as we're close. Another good reference is concrete block. And these are typically about 8 inches wide, 8 inches tall, and 16 inches long. Another really good reference are doors. Doors and windows are great. Now, a typical door is about 3 feet wide, 6 feet 8 inches tall, and they usually have a framework around them, which is usually about 4 inches. So we're looking at about a 7-foot tall door. It's also good to know that the knobs on doors are usually about 3 feet off the ground. Stairs are also a great reference. And typical stairs, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but usually they're between 8 and 12 inches wide, and they rise up about 6.5 to 7 inches. I usually just go with 7 and 11. Another good reference is humans. Typical, like the average human height is about 170 centimeters, which is roughly 67 inches. But that's only to his eyes. So if we add another 4 inches, so we already know some dimensions for the door. So let's go ahead and see if we can figure out how big these panels are. So we know that the door is about 3 feet wide, and it's about 3 feet up to the knob. So we know that this square right here is 3 feet by 3 feet. So what we can do is we can use this to figure out how big this panel is. So we've got this. If we split this up into thirds roughly, okay, now what we can do is say, alright, we've got 3 feet there. If we move this up, that's about another 8 inches. So it looks like 3 feet 8 inches tall, and about 5 feet wide exactly. And the gaps between them are about 1 inch, I would say. So I think that's probably close enough to tell. Another thing. Let's figure out how big this window is. Now, we know the dimensions of bricks. So we looked at that example. Now, they're about 8 inches long, but another really interesting and easy thing to help you out. So if you take one of these bricks and you rotate it, it's about 3 bricks tall also. So 3 bricks tall is 8 inches. So knowing that, we can come over here, and I know it seems kind of dumb, but it really does make a difference in the end. If you start counting these bricks up, you can figure out how big this window is. So if we start counting these bricks up by threes, we can see that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bricks tall. It's about 48 inches. And another 2 bricks, it's about a bit shorter, but for this example that'll work. We can tell that this door is pretty short, it's about 6 feet, and we can start using him as a visual reference throughout the rest of the scene. So if you count this up, you get about probably 24 feet or so. So here we have an example of some concrete block. So you can easily tell, got 10 across, they're 16 inches long, it's 160 inches, and 3 of them tall, looking at 24 inches. Now here we can do one more thing. We can find the vanishing points in this image. This is a good image to do that with. So we take this into Photoshop, and just like before, we're going to just follow these lines and find where that horizon is. And that's that's where the horizon is. And finally, let's take a look at the environment that we're actually going to be building. First of all, this is in China, so once again, we're not exactly sure on what the standard dimensions for things are over there. And this city is pretty old, so it may not have even had standard dimensions when it was built. But what we can tell about this is that this photo was taken by our average human. So is roughly 5'6" tall. We can start using that as a reference to figure out how tall other features are. So the next time you're looking at your reference images, do your best to try and find the horizon and take an educated guess at how high up the camera is off the ground, and also look for visual cues that are going to help you determine the scale of your scene.